Accessing Secure Channel. The Agent Files, where aspiring agents rise and masters flourish. Powered by Agent Builder Coaching. Mission initiated. File loading.
Hi there, this is Peter Fan for Agent Builder Coaching and the Agent Files specifically for those that are almost agents, i.e. the ones that have completed their pre-licensing courses. They're almost ready to rock and roll and get going in the business of real estate. And with that in mind, we have created a set of podcasts specifically for you. And I'm just adjusting the screen a little bit just to make sure that everything shows. So I hope we got it. All right. So this episode is specifically based on technology. And as you can tell, technology always changes. And even after this many years and this many episodes, I still fumble with some of it. So it doesn't always end up being perfect. But here we go. Technology is by far your biggest ally, but it can also be a fairly significant time waster. So it is important to kind of get your parameters straight from the word go. And the biggest, I guess, eye-opener for myself was because I'm an early adopter. I like working with technology. I use a lot of technology, and I'll mention a whole bunch of them over the duration of this episode. But it isn't always better when you switch or change. And that's a realization that sometimes you have to pay a painful price for. So I'm going to caution you, warn you for just jumping on the next bandwagon too early, too fast. With that in mind, you also need to find kind of the right rationale and logic to sometimes abandon something that you may have been used to for a while and that you're comfortable with, but isn't relevant anymore for whatever reason or purpose. But let me give you an example. And I'm going way, way, way back. You know, when I started in real estate, computers were there. Okay. And that's about the extent of it. Right. We did have some access to what we then called a bulletin board type MLS system. So we could see listings and we can get a little bit of information there, but it wasn't really a big deal. Okay. Most, if not all of the information came through by way of a catalog that we got every 2 weeks. And then what we call our dailies or our blue sheets and the individual listing sheets. So every day, literally every day, there was a driver from the real estate board that popped by with, a couple of dollies worth of blue sheets, boxes full, and they were handed out to every agent. And you would then go manually through all of these new listings, and you updated price changes and things that were reported sold, and added new listings, and so on and so forth. And then you saw something that made sense, then you quickly made a note or made a quick phone call to potential buyers, and so on and so forth. Okay, that was pretty much your first 2 hours of the day, and yes, we did work a lot more in the office in those days because that's where the information came in. It wasn't delivered in any other way than on paper, right? And like I said, there was a bulletin board, but it wasn't very user friendly. There was no such thing as Windows. It didn't exist yet, right? And there was kind of some faxing, but it was all on thermal paper in those days. So for us, going from a wired phone to a mobile phone, which was a box about yay big and so high and 2.5 kilos and with a shoulder strap attached to it, that was your mobile phone with a bracket in the back of your car where you could mount the whole thing so that it could be charged from your car battery. It wasn't the greatest solution. Then we got pagers and all that kind of stuff. So technology has always been kind of following real estate around. And the more technology became available, the better things got for some people. I distinctly remember having conversations with agents saying that, when this computer thing really becomes important, I'm out. I don't want to be bothered with all that stuff. And yes, it did change the dynamics of the industry then. I'm talking 1980s. And over the years and over the decades, things have continued to change, right? We went from now or from then being very paper dependent to now virtually paperless. I mean, in theory, you could do pretty much all transactions without paper, but in reality, we're still actually thinking and functioning with paper. It's digital paper, right? It's not actually printed necessarily, but it's still in the form of digital paper. We're still not actually digital in the true sense of the word, that everything is done inside of code or inside of web pages. There are some applications that work that way, but still not many. Even the content printing cell is digital paper. It's all a digital version of a paper environment. Still, the listings themselves, yeah, there's a bit more digital purpose, but it's still very hard to export any of that information. So technology becoming more and more an integrated entity. And of course, integration has also helped us in many other areas. For example, in the good old bad old days, I don't actually remember them all that fondly, but anyways, going to do research on a listing in those days required us to manually go to the land titles office, pull the microfilms and the fiches for all the easements and right-of-ways and the site surveys and all that stuff manually from what in those days was deemed to be high-tech microfilm type Kodak machines, so that you could actually do it yourself, or you had to ask the staff for them to pull it, and then it would take forever and sometimes even days. Or you had title search companies that would do this stuff, and it would still take days, and it still would cost a fair amount of money. So you could actually go in and do it on microfiche, and then they charge you X amount of per page that you film. And I can still smell the smoke, the odor of the microfiche machines, because when the films moved fast in forwarding or going backwards in the machine, there was always this kind of weird smell come out of these things. And these machines didn't always protect the film all that well. Anyway, that's another story. So you went from land titles, then you went to the municipality, and in the municipality, you literally physically had to go from one department to the next: planning to engineering to the works yard to the fire department to the police department. Get all of the individual records from each and every property, and you literally walked up and asked for them, and they then pulled the paper files and gave you a copy of whatever it is, and you paid for the copies that you pulled. That's how it worked. Now, of course, 90% of what I just talked about, you can do digitally without ever leaving your phone, or you can do a lot of this on the phone. But I actually still prefer to work on the desktop, mainly because my eyes aren't that great and my fingers are very big. So me doing everything on my phone, I have a pretty smart phone, and actually pretty decent one. One of these foldable ones, and it works excellent. So that's part of the evolution, right? From very, very paper driven to very, very high tech and everything in between. Now, if you just think about all of that evolution, where do you jump on and where do you jump off as to where you are going to fit yourself into your business of operating a real estate practice? That's an important decision, because making changes along the way is a distraction. It takes time, effort, energy, sometimes a bit of money. And particularly when you start thinking about client management, right? How do you maintain good records, reliable, predictable records of your clients in a secure and protected way, so that you can access it anytime, any place, anywhere, in a way that makes sense for actual transactions, but more importantly, on an ongoing relationship base, right? It's not uncommon for realtors to have databases or lists of clients and people, well into thousands of people. So to do that manually, and yes, I still have some of those index boxes where I had A to Z and then 12 months and 1 through 31, so that I could move index cards from inactive to active, from active to when am I going to talk to them next, and so on and so forth. That was a very practical, very handy manual system, and I suppose you could still do that. And I'm sure there's a few realtors still doing that kind of stuff. But most people now use what they call a contact management system for that, or a spreadsheet to it. But something digital that they have all their data and all their records in. And of course, one-stop solutions then become very popular. And what I mean by one-stop solution, contact management systems do exactly that, right? They keep your communication with people in one place. So you send an email, you send a text, you send paperwork, a contract, flyers, newsletters, marketing materials, anniversary stuff. It's all sourced from one place. And there's many proprietary tools and resources for that available. So making the right choices is an important part of what you can do now to prepare for your career in real estate. That's what we're going to talk about a bit more directly. But remember this: the best tool is the one you know how to use and use, right? It's great if you know how to use it, but you actually got to use it. And it's an important realization, right? If you have the best tool in the world, but you're not using it, then what do you do? It becomes a boat anchor, right? And it's important that you know how to use it, so that if and when you need to teach somebody else or you need to hire somebody, you can actually do that if necessary, or you become the fallback person so that you can always get back into the tech system. So here's some technology that matters, right? Again, real estate now runs very much on communication, and we talked about communication in both the marketing episode as well as the actual wow section, where we really talk about that most of this business is really dependent upon how well your clients know, like, and trust you. And that's all communication, right? Whether it is about real estate or anything else for that, right? In fact, much of the relationship is not about real estate at all the time, right? It's much more about true, meaningful communication and relationships. So your technology becomes your support system, your accountability system, your communication system, your follow through, but also your transactional record keeping, your financial records, and so on and so forth. Right. So now, is that one tool for all things? No, it's not. And which is part of the challenge, is to how do you make all of this stuff work together? And it's not always as easy as people think. In a crazy way, Canada is the second largest country in the world. We all know that. However, in a real estate context, we're actually a relatively small marketplace, certainly compared to the United States. In the United States, there's well over 1 million real estate agents, well over 1 million. In Canada, we have, I think, about 150,000 at the top end, and it's declining at this point in time, mainly because, of course, we've gone through a bit of a softer marketplace. So proprietary products for Canadian markets are actually relatively rare. So many times we deal with American products that are Canadianized. Now you'll say, well, what's the diff? Well, there actually is. I mean, just on the matter of postal codes versus zip codes, that's an issue. The way we format dates, that's an issue. Then there is, of course, language and spelling differences and terminology differences that are just not caught up with between the United States and Canada. So making sure that you end up with if you're using proprietary type products like CRMs and contact management systems for real estate purposes, that something is actually adjusted and accommodated for Canadian purposes can actually be quite significant. And certainly now, where there's also a bit of a political flavor attached to it, of course. But anyway, so communication, right? Not only that you have communication tools, but that you have the right ones and the ones that you actually use. Consistency and continuity. We've talked on various occasions in other episodes about those two words, consistency and continuity. That's the key reason to have technology help you, because you can set a reminder once and it will run indefinitely. And then for you, it's just push the right buttons to make it happen, to make things actually move. Right. So the earlier you set this up, the easier it is. Just if you just simplistically say, if you have a list of say 100 people and you have to now enter it into some sort of a system, and you build that list and it becomes 1,000, and all of a sudden you start changing from one product to another product, guess what? You're now having to move all of that. Now that's seems easy, and yes, there is translation and transfer programs that exist, but they never catch everything. Never. In 40 years, I've never had one of these conversion programs actually catch everything. It always makes a bit of a mess of these transitions. So yes, you may get the essentials, but you won't get the notes, or you don't get some of the customized fields, or there's no possibility to do financial bits in it, or there's always something that goes astray when you try to move data from one place to another. And so I've tried in many different ways. Like I said, I'm an early adopter, so a lot of this stuff I've gone through myself and paid the price many times over. Again, also, the earlier you adopt something, you adapt to something, the easier it is to learn, because there's not quite the time pressures and the learning curve therefore becomes a little bit easier to swallow. Okay. All right. So what do you actually use? Well, here are some essentials that you will use one way or another. Okay. You're going to use email. You're going to use some sort of a digital calendar. Now you can find all kinds of products and services. You can have proprietary CRMs that will do all of that stuff as well. I'm going to suggest to you that certainly in the beginning, try to maintain, some degree of normality, as in, don't go overboard with all of these expenses. But so I still to this day use Gmail to this day. Why? Because it works. And everything works with Gmail. Everything works with Gmail, right? And I was an advocate for Outlook for the longest times, and I just found the pricing and somewhat of the quirkiness in some of the programs getting to me a little bit. I still like a lot of the Microsoft products, and I use a good number of them still. But it's hard to compete with the size and the volume and the capabilities that Gmail and Google has. But if you're an Apple product user, so be it. Nothing against Apple. I don't use any Apple product, full disclosure. Not because I don't like it. I just don't want to change. Right? Keep in mind, I've been doing this for 40 years, so I have 40 years of baggage in computer technology, and I'm not going to switch that out into some other format that I now have to start from scratch. It's just yeah, that part I'm kind of stuck with. If I had known 30, 40 years earlier what the two would evolve into, would I have been on Apple? I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know. And it doesn't matter anymore because I'm not making that type of switch. I do find on many situations where I talk to people that overall people that have made the switch find working in Windows environment, or in a Microsoft-based environment or a Google-based environment, a little bit more flexible in the sense that they can bring in their own thoughts, ideas, and tools and products and apps and whatever else, compared to where Apple kind of is more rigid. It's their way or the highway. Now, for some people, that's perfect. For others, with a bit more kind of independence, I suppose, they prefer, or some people prefer, that independence a little bit. Okay. Either way, whatever you use, stay consistent, right? So my phone is Android. I use Google Workspace, I guess is what it's called, and have a professional account there, which costs me very little money. I think it's $15 a month or so, and it gives me all of the tools and all of the applications, and it gives me what I want. Okay, and there's more there than I never use or have used. Okay, Microsoft Office. I think you can get an annual package for 5 computers for less than $300 a year, so it's not overly expensive either. Um, okay, and integration of all of these things will work. Now, but one of the things that you got to pay attention to is your file storage. Where do you store your data? Is it on your computer? Is it on in the cloud? Is it where is it? What is it? Because you will move data and information a lot, and we in the end, over time, decided that okay, we'll compromise and we'll use Google on that. Surely, it's not perfect. It's not ideal, and inevitably, there will always be some contention as to the privacy laws and what have you. But seeing that pretty much the entire real estate industry is struggling with this, I'm just part of a very large pool of people that are probably not entirely compliant with the law, but we do the best we can where we can. Ideally, you want to be using data servers that are exclusively in Canada, but none of the big providers of data storage can guarantee that at this point in time. None of them. They all say that they have data storage in Canada. Google does, Microsoft does, Apple does. They all say they have it, but in reality, they cannot guarantee that all the data is in Canada all the time. They just cannot guarantee it. So that's an issue, and we're, as an industry, and many industries, by the way, even provincial governments, federal governments have had issues with this, are struggling with that a little bit still. And so in the wording of some of the contracts, there is disclosures made that deal with that. So for the most part, we're okay there. Now, as far as contact management, CRMs, many people now, to begin, start off with a spreadsheet, right? Name, contact information, address, yada, yada, yada. And then you can always upgrade later. If you're really tech savvy, you can certainly customize a lot of this stuff. There are really good real estate specific proprietary CRMs, and there are a number of those that now also integrate a website and marketing on a website, and lead generation and capture and follow up programs all into one CRM based website. Examples of that are products from KV Core and Lofty and Realty Geek, and there's a few other ones around that do that. And it's typically a monthly cost to them that runs, depending on the brokers that you're with, because some it's built into their fee structure, some of it you pay extra, some of it you get a discounted price, right? So it depends a little bit on the brokers. But if you went retail on a product from KV Core, you're probably at about $200 a month. Lofty about a little bit less, but not a whole lot less. Um, but then when you're inside of a brokerage that has a contract with these providers, you get the brokerage version of that tool at either no cost or lower cost, or it is built into your monthly fees with the organization. So that's one of the things to pay attention to. But again, you got to pay attention. This is your business, so you need to be able to think through, what if I move? How easily can I export all of this data now that it is part of somebody else's control? It's not my direct account with this service provider. It's via the brokers that I'm with. I'm not saying that that's being used as a sabotage or a blackmail type way to retain you in a brokerage, but it can sometimes on export and importing, even in the same product, become a bit of a challenge. I found that out the hard way, that it's not easy to move data in versions of the same service provider from one organization to another. It actually became a bit of a real technical battle because the technology company provider was not able to actually make that easy. It really was quite a ordeal. Anyway, then other tools that people use are things like task managers like Trello, Asana, ClickUp, the thing for note taking. Now, the new part, and this is, I guess, where technology keeps evolving, there's now not a realtor that doesn't have some sort of an account with an artificial intelligence portal, whether it's Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or products that are supported by Microsoft or any of the other big providers out there. And there's many, right? And so it's really easy to kind of get caught up with all of this stuff and start investing in all of this stuff, because there's always a grass is greener mode somewhere else, right? Somebody else has come up with another way of doing things. So it comes back to, what is your need? What do you want your business to look, feel, and act like, so that you are in sync with your business plans, rather than you jumping on a bandwagon and now you try to make the bandwagon do what you want to do in your business. And that doesn't always align, right? So start with a strong core, being, what is your business? What is your business model? What is your business plan? What do you want your business to do and represent? And then fill in the blanks with some technology that supports the business plan, not the other way around, right? It needs to work for you. You should not be working with a technology, if that makes sense. Okay. So, like I said, some brokerages have CRMs that they offer you, right? Whether that's KV Core, Chime, or Lofty, whichever way it's called nowadays, Follow Up Boss. There's so many. There's Webmasters. There's My Real Page. There's so many of these things around. I think the last time I really did some digging on that, there's well over 100 different real estate specific CRMs. And then there is ones that are semi-generic that can easily be adopted to real estate. Okay, so options galore. And it's therefore important to get comfortable with what you want and then fill in the blanks as you go. Okay. Now, on the flip side of that, there is that's all contact management and websites and all of that type of stuff. But there is also the transactional side of things. So your relationship with your brokerage, in the good old bad old days, when technology wasn't quite as evolved, we literally would walk into the office with a file folder in a hand and hand the file folder to the reception desk and ask them to process the file for the company. And then the administrators in the office would do the office stuff of the transaction, and you would get a transaction sheet and you would look over things, and if there was subject removals or paperwork to be added and subtracted, then it would be done pretty much all manual. Well, now I'm going to say the vast majority of the brokerages, this is all done digitally now, and call them digital filing cabinets. So you do a new listing, you submit your paperwork through this digital filing cabinet with checklist, and so you attach one form here and that form there, and then again the office does their thing, the company does their thing, and the same on the sale. Now, in some offices, the administrative staff does a little more, and some offices does a little less, but the process is kind of the same. The technology is relatively straightforward once you learn it, and you don't really have much of a choice because it's typically company driven, right? The company's made the decision to use SkySlope, Dotloop, Transaction Desk, Broker Wolf, Lone Wolf. There's a whole bunch of these tools that exist, and they're industry standards that are being used, and they're pretty much compliant. Okay, so that's another piece of technology that you have to work with. You won't have access to that stuff until you're actually licensed. So you may want to ask what it is, and then maybe do some. If you're considering various brokers, ask them what is your transaction management system and how is that all integrated. And maybe they can show you a demo. Maybe they can point you direction to some YouTube videos so you can learn a little bit about what that looks and feels like. They're all very similar, though. They're not dramatically different. They all need to do pretty much the same thing. The engagement level from your part versus what the office that may change a little bit. Now, then, of course, you have the MLS system, and again, as I said early on, I started with a, a three-ring binder, a catalog every 2 weeks, blue sheets and markers and highlighters and pens to update a manual system. Now it's pretty much instantaneous on my phone. So I can have the entire system, the entire MLS of anywhere in Canada on my phone accessible pretty much 24/7. And so does the consumer. So the consumer is much more informed about all of the data than when I started in real estate, right? We were the gatekeepers almost of the data. And for a large part, that was a big resistance was built up by a lot of realtors that said, why are we giving all this information to the consumer? No, they should come to us first. Well, kind of protectionism, but and in the end it didn't work. And now it's much more freely available. And there's still some thresholds that kind of protect some of the data, I suppose, but you learn to work with that. And dependent on your board, each of them will have different rules and different systems. But in Western Canada, there's kind of two or three predominant systems that exist. And so one is um, based on a program called Matrix, and then the Paragon, which is certainly in BC fairly common because it services the two largest ports in the province. And then there's other tools and products that are being used in different jurisdictions. And some boards have their own proprietary stuff. Okay. Now, on top of that, of course, there is a thing called web forms. And web forms is a tool that is offered through CREA. And it allows us to generate contracts and paperwork, and it's very jurisdictional. So each province will have their own access to their paperwork and whatever. And in BC, there is a pretty much 90% of all of the paperwork, all of the contracts are pre-created. So we fill in names and addresses, and it can pull a bit of data from the MLS system and automatically put it in. So again, that's a tool that you'll learn to use. So there's some more technology there. And then nowadays, of course, a lot of that is integrated with digital signature platforms. Now, that's kind of a good number of the pieces of technology in day-to-day operation. Now, there's a few other pieces of technology that we use. For example, one of the requirements is that we are compliant with FINTRAC. FINTRAC is the financial information collection legislation that exists throughout Canada for the large financial transactions, and we are collecting personal information on whomever does large financial transactions, and we have to report if there's any suspicious transactions. Well, there is apps for that now that fill in a lot of that paperwork by literally scanning a driver's license. So there's not a lot of manual work, but it still has to be filed and it still needs to be reported if there is anything suspicious. Then we, in our company, and other companies will have similar tools, I suppose, we can now deposit deposit checks without ever having to go into a bank. So we got a certified check, a money order, uh, you know, and we can literally scan it and it goes into our trust account. Now, yes, I know that there is personal accounts that can do that, but it was actually very rare up until recently that you could do it on commercial banking accounts. And of course, as a real estate company, we work with commercial banking accounts for the brokerage purposes. And so that's actually a tool that saves us a lot of time because you don't have to go to banks or don't have to go to an office to deliver checks and what have you. So that's quite a time saver. Now, some other tools that we use, early on I said, oh, you had to go to the land titles office and manually pull all this stuff. Well, not anymore. You can now go certainly in BC. Again, different provinces, different jurisdictions will have their own versions of this. But the land titles office, the title registrations office, you can now access online and get most of the title related, ownership related information right then and there. You can also get court related information, corporate records, and all of that stuff is now digitally available and no longer requires you manually go into all of these things. Again, lots and lots of data. Okay. Then there is, of course, the whole marketing side of things and the promotional side of things, the video side of things. And this is where we're seeing, I think, the largest transition taking place from manual to now more and more integration with artificial intelligence. And it is a little concerning because it's a bit of a free-for-all. For example, and I'm just pointing out one, and it's one of the ones that we're dealing with right now in a good number of instances. It is very, very easy to take a bunch of relatively bad photos of a property inside and out, throw it through an AI filter, and it makes it look dashing and smashing, right? Fantastic. Well, but is it true? Is it truthful? Are we not creating misleading advertising or false impressions of what we're representing? So, yes, there is some, or no, I should say, there are some rules around it now where it says you need to disclose what is and what isn't artificial intelligence. But still, it's not quite accurate and truthful, even though it says we make a disclosure that, well, it's kind of like those optical illusion mirrors, right? The object in the mirror may seem closer by or more distant than in reality. Well, the same with these images. Do you see it as a distortion or do you see it as what it is? And then you need to kind of remind yourself that it is not quite the same way. So that's just one part. The other part is, of course, that people start becoming more and more creative with the use of AI with their marketing language. And again, that can lead to, is the information correct? Is it verified? Is it verifiable? Right? It may make some statements and allegations. So we still need to be the gatekeeper of the information, the data, the materials. And don't get me wrong, I'm all over AI. I use it a lot. I look at it a lot. I have an idea and a bit of inspiration, and I'll let AI give me some direction, and then I redo most of the stuff that comes from it, or I ask it 3 or 4 times to do a better job because I don't like what it does many times. And yes, it learns, but it also gets lazy and takes shortcuts and doesn't verify sources and uses the wrong sources or so on. So it's I use this phrase in the past, but I'll use it here again because it's very on point with AI. It's garbage in, garbage out. If you don't give it all of the information, all of the parameters that it needs in order to give you a proper and complete reply, it cannot give you a complete reply. So it's only as good as the information that it gets. So that's the challenge that we're facing with this very moment, and I can guarantee you that that's an evolving piece that will continue to dramatically have impact on our day-to-day operations in real estate. And the technology is evolving very, very rapidly. Right, I mean, 5 years ago, people weren't talking about AI at all. Period. Was not a topic. We were just getting used to virtual tours and video walkthroughs and all of that stuff. Now that's just so common, it's kind of second nature. So evolution takes place pretty much anywhere every time. And right now you can't even go into Canva and shut off the AI. Right? It will give you options and opportunities. Go into Google. Do a Google search. It will do both AI as well as a traditional Google search. In fact, one of the things in marketing is not just do a Google search on somebody or something, but also do an AI search on something or somebody. Do them both because the results will be dramatically different. And if you are seen as high profile in Google search, what do you represent in AI? And it can make a real difference because people actually trust AI more than they trust Google searches right now or web searches. So there's something there as well. And again, this is very much evolving as we speak. Okay, very evolving as we speak. And I could speak for hours on the topic of AI because it is that dynamic. All right, so some of the mistakes to avoid. Okay, please do not sign up for everything that shows up because it's a shiny object or it sounds good or what have you. Do trial runs if you absolutely think that you might need it, and don't commit to annual contracts pretty much in anything, certainly not in the beginning. Okay. Try to find free solutions and or try to find lifetime plans if you can. I do not advocate for monthly subscriptions for pretty much anything. I have no stake in what I say, by the way. I do not do affiliate marketing. I don't promote one product over another. If I promote something, then I probably use it myself. That's why, reluctantly I say Google probably over most others. Not because I love Google or what they stand for, or that they're like the organization. Not at all, because there's a lot of problems there, and it doesn't always work, and it is very one-sided. But it is the most wisely used level of technology in the marketplace right now. And I am a believer in swimming downstream. And what I mean by that is I don't want to battle every piece of activity that I need to do just because I have a piece of technology or an app or a tool that doesn't fit with everything else that is available in the marketplace in the industry. It just doesn't make sense. They spend way too much time on that type of stuff. So, um, yeah, don't skip backups and password management. You got to deal with password management, and there's free tools for that. But you'll end up with so many passwords, right, for just your business side of things that you got to figure out how to use proper management with it. And there are some pretty good apps for that you can use for free. Okay. Um, so if you do decide to work with Google or whatever it is that you use, ideally use your brand name. If it's your name, fine. Okay. If you say, "Hey, I'm the greatest realtor in, I don't know, Fort McNeil," use that. Right. Do use your brand as much as possible, and then use a proper folder structure. Right. So marketing is one side, transactions, other, finances, you know, and so on and so forth. And then create subfolders in all of those. Right. Buyer, sellers, sphere of influence, campaigns, what have you. use a task manager, right? Whether it is, you can use tasks inside of Google and their calendar, but you can use Asana or Trello or um, Notion, and there's a few free tools around as well, by the way, that work relatively well. For example, Canva is one of those marketing tools that I think you just need to register an account. Use the free account for as long as you can. Now, what you'll find inside of Canva, and I believe it is on the free section, that you can actually schedule your social media activities in their calendar for free. So that can save you a lot of time if you create stuff in Canva already. Okay, you're gonna find a flavor of the month marketing campaign from somebody coming to say, "Oh, you got to use Claude because Claude does all these things," and then somebody else will say, "Oh, yeah, ChatGPT is just the greatest thing since life, and you have all these apps and yada 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 yada." Slow it down, right? Think about what you actually need, what you're actually going to be using, what it's for, what is filling in your blanks. And it goes all the way back to episode 1, I think, where we say, you got to know what you're after, what your objective is. Your business plan should guide you in a lot of ways as to where you need assistance and support, and then fill it in carefully, one piece at a time. Okay. Technology is very much a silent business partner in every way, shape, or form you can possibly think of. So use it, but let it help you. Don't become the slave of the technology. It's the other way around. It works for you, not you working for it. Okay? And yeah, if you use technology properly, it also, and it's a side benefit that's not even stated here, but it's really a significant benefit. It can systematize you to the point where you can much easier delegate activities than if you had to rewrite it all manually and redo things manually. Okay. So if you use Asana or you use Trello, and that's your project management tool, and you've got, uh, you know, uh, cards for every prospect that you're working with, and you're moving cards around, well, you got a system, right? And you can teach that system to somebody else. Okay. In your pre-licensing period, doing that homework, one of the things I would encourage you to do is talk to other agents about what they use as far as technology. It's a really good question to ask. What do you use? What should you use, or what should I use, and what did you abandon, and for what reason, right? And you're going to hear some interesting stuff. There's people that have invested thousands of dollars in these VR monitor things, and yeah, just never came off. People thought that virtual reality was going to be a big deal, and people have bought their own kind of 3D cameras and virtual reality and virtual tour type technology for thousands of dollars, and now it's being done for whatever $100 on a listing. Why would you invest the time, energy, and effort to do it all yourself? Unless it's your hobby, it just doesn't make sense. Anyway, so whatever it is that you adopt and implement, master it, and then, if at all possible, try to find a way to delegate a good portion of it, and then only use what you need for your clients. Okay. So here's some action items. Set up your business account. And I say Gmail, but it could be whatever it is that you want it to be. But set it up, get it in place. Enter your sphere of influence and contacts into your CRM or your spreadsheet. Get it in one place. So if you have 100 people in your Facebook and 50 people in your Instagram and 200 people in your phone, it all needs to be in one place. Can't be all scattered all over the place. It's impossible to manage that. Everything's got to be in one place. Okay? It just absolutely has to be, because if you try to do it 2 years down the road, it becomes a nightmare, a major nightmare, and you will have lost so many opportunities. You won't even believe how many. Okay. Build your first Trello or Asana board if that's what you decide on using. Trello has a free account version. There are alternative. Notion is relatively inexpensive. Trello and Asana are owned, as far as I know, by the same company. It's just a higher level of, and then there's a few other tools around. And if you really want more information on that, let me know. You can actually do a lot of that stuff in a spreadsheet as well. Okay, you can just make Google Sheets or Excel or any other spreadsheet act as if it is a project board. It's not that hard to do. Okay, here's some reading suggestions. Okay, Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a very system driven set of materials. So build systems. Right? Because once you have the systems, then you can delegate. Right? YouTube tutorials about Canva, Trello, Google integrations, automations, including AI automations, right? Because there are some automations that are pretty cool, right? I've written some prompts for myself, right, for generating newsletters that are highly specific, highly focused on very small segments of the marketplace in very specific communities. And I'm astonished by how well it pulls this information and how useful it is. So it can be very well done, but it takes time to do that. So I wouldn't necessarily encourage you to invest a whole lot of time, effort, and energy in it now, but it's something to consider. And then, find out if you're already committed to a brokerage, whether it is ours or any of the other brokerages out there, find out what their onboarding technology is and what they use, and then learn some of their tools already before you've even licensed. Okay, that's helpful because it will shortcut a lot of the learning curve. Now, this was a longer than average episode, and mainly because technology is so transitional. We probably will have a different discussion in a future session about technology in real estate again. So this is very much a living piece. If you have any questions, by all means, reach out. If we can help in any way, shape, or form and be specific on your wants and needs, I'd be delighted to assist. You have a fantastic week and all the best, and hope to see you soon in one of the next episodes of the Agent Files. Have a fantastic week.
File saved. The Agent Files. For more missions, agents' tools, and tactical strategies, subscribe and follow the Agent Files, powered by Agent Builder Coaching. Until next time, stay sharp. Your next mission awaits.